10 cheap hillbilly sandwiches that define country life in the early 1970s may sound simple, but these sandwiches shaped an entire way of living. Out in the quiet hills and long winding roads of rural America, food was never just food. It was survival, pride, and a daily reminder that creativity could rise even from an empty pantry. These sandwiches were built during years when money was scarce, choices were limited, and families relied on pure resourcefulness to get through each week. What makes these sandwiches so important is how honestly they reflect the era. Every bite carried the story of long workdays, tight budgets, and the determination to feed a family with whatever ingredients were available. These meals were wrapped in wax paper, packed into metal lunch pails, and served at tables where every crumb mattered. Some combinations were clever, some were unusual, and some were comfort food at its purest. Together, they form a living snapshot of how people in the early 1970s made something meaningful from almost nothing. By watching this video, you are not just seeing a list. You are stepping back into a world where flavor came from effort, patience, and tradition. These sandwiches reveal how families survived, how children grew up, and how communities stayed connected through the simplest meals. Before we begin, make sure to join us here on America's Lost Recipes, because preserving these forgotten foods is a way of honoring the people who created them. The deeper we go into this list, the more you will understand why these sandwiches mattered then, and why they still deserve a place in America's story today. Stay with me, because every sandwich on this list carries a memory worth keeping alive. The fried bologna stack. The first sandwich on this list is the fried bologna stack, a true symbol of country life in the early 1970s. In rural communities, bologna was one of the few meats that families could afford on a regular basis. It was cheap, reliable, and available in every small-town grocery store, which made it the foundation of countless quick meals. When times were difficult, this sandwich turned a simple ingredient into something warm, filling, and unexpectedly comforting. What made the fried bologna stack so recognizable was its preparation. Families would slice thick rounds of bologna, score the edges to prevent curling, and drop them into a hot cast-iron skillet. The sizzle filled the kitchen with a smell that every child from that era can remember. The meat browned at the edges, bubbled at the center, and developed a flavor far richer than anyone expected from such an inexpensive cut. The sandwich was usually built on soft white bread, sometimes toasted, sometimes not. A smear of mustard or a thin spread of mayonnaise was all most households added, because every ingredient had to stretch. The real focus was the stack of fried slices, piled high enough to feel generous even when money was tight. Some families added an egg when they needed extra energy for a long workday, but the heart of the sandwich always remained the same. This simple meal mattered because it represented more than just food. It captured the spirit of families who did their best with limited options and still found a way to create something satisfying. The fried bologna stack was a reminder that comfort did not require wealth. It only required heat, bread, and the determination to make a single ingredient feel like a full meal. The peanut butter and banana mash. The second sandwich on this list is the peanut butter and banana mash, a humble creation that carried real meaning for country families in the early 1970s. Life in rural America often required meals that were quick, filling, and affordable, and this simple combination delivered all three. Many households kept peanut butter in the pantry because it lasted a long time and provided steady energy. Bananas were one of the few fruits that remained reasonably priced, even when budgets were tight. Together, they formed a sandwich that tasted sweet, felt satisfying, and brought comfort to both children and adults. The preparation was straightforward. Families would slice ripe bananas into soft pieces and mix them directly into a bowl of peanut butter until the texture became smooth and creamy. This mash spread easily across white bread, which was the most common choice in country homes. Some families liked the mash thick, while others preferred a thinner spread so the loaf would go further. What mattered most was that the sandwich delivered enough fuel for long school days, farm chores, or hours spent outdoors with very little else to eat. The mash was more than a flavor combination. It was a reflection of the simple pleasures that made rural life feel warm, even during difficult times. The sweetness offered comfort, the peanut butter offered strength, and the sandwich symbolized the way families made something meaningful from ordinary ingredients. It traveled well in lunch pails, required no refrigeration, and stayed soft until mealtime. For many children, this sandwich became a taste they remembered long after those years passed. The peanut butter and banana mash showed that good food did not need complexity. It needed heart, practicality, and the determination to create comfort from the everyday items already sitting in the kitchen. The cold bean and onion sandwich. The third sandwich on this list is the cold bean and onion sandwich, a rural classic that may seem unusual today but held real importance for country families in the early 1970s. In many small towns, canned beans were one of the most dependable pantry staples. They were inexpensive, they lasted for months, and they provided enough protein to keep a working family going. When money became tight or meals needed to stretch further than expected, this sandwich stepped in as a dependable solution. The preparation was simple. Families would open a can of baked beans or pinto beans, drain them lightly, and mash them with the back of a spoon until they thickened. A few thin slices of raw onion were added for sharpness, giving the sandwich a flavor that country households recognized instantly. The mixture was spread onto white bread, which absorbed the juices just enough to hold everything together without falling apart. It was not fancy, but it was filling, and that was what mattered. This sandwich became common in lunch pails, especially for long days in fields, workshops, and mills. It offered enough energy to last until evening, and it required no refrigeration, which made it ideal for families who spent most of their days outdoors. Children often learned to appreciate this sandwich because it tasted like the meals their parents grew up with, and it became part of the rhythm of rural life. The cold bean and onion sandwich carried a quiet meaning. It reminded families that even with limited resources, they could still gather around food that tasted familiar and comforting. It captured the spirit of resilience that defined the early 1970s, when households relied on simple ingredients and steady effort to create meals that truly mattered. The tomato and lard spread sandwich. The fourth sandwich on this list is the tomato and lard spread sandwich, a creation that perfectly reflects the resourcefulness of country families in the early 1970s. Many rural households kept a jar of rendered pork lard in the kitchen because it was affordable, versatile, and capable of replacing butter when money was tight. When fresh tomatoes were in season, families combined the two ingredients to make a sandwich that delivered both flavor and sustenance without costing more than a few cents. The preparation began with slicing homegrown tomatoes, usually picked from backyard gardens or small family plots. These tomatoes carried a deep, rich taste that store-bought produce could rarely match. Families spread a thin layer of softened lard onto slices of white bread, which created a smooth, savory base. The tomatoes were layered on top, sprinkled lightly with salt and black pepper, and then covered with another layer of bread to hold everything together. Although the ingredients were simple, the sandwich felt complete. The lard added a gentle richness that balanced the acidity of the tomatoes, while the bread absorbed the juices to create a soft, comforting bite. This combination made the sandwich ideal for quick lunches, long workdays in the fields, or quiet afternoons when families needed something filling but had very little to spare. The tomato and lard spread sandwich represented the practical traditions that shaped rural life. It used ingredients that families already had on hand and transformed them into a meal that carried both familiarity and warmth. Children often remembered the flavor long after they grew older, because it tasted like summer gardens, worn wooden tables, and the steady routines that defined everyday living. This sandwich proved that real comfort often came from the simplest items sitting in the kitchen, ready to be used with care and purpose. The sugar and butter sandwich. The fifth sandwich on this list is the sugar and butter sandwich, a familiar treat that carried surprising importance for rural families in the early 1970s. Although it looked simple, this sandwich represented a moment of sweetness during years when desserts were rare, money was limited, and every indulgence had to come from ingredients already sitting in the kitchen. White bread, butter, and a small sprinkle of sugar were all many households needed to create a small taste of comfort. The preparation began with soft slices of bread spread generously with fresh butter, often churned at home or purchased in small blocks from local stores. Families sprinkled fine white sugar across the surface until it formed a delicate layer that sparkled in the light. Once the top slice of bread was pressed down, the sugar melted slightly into the butter, creating a texture that felt smooth, soft, and unexpectedly satisfying. This sandwich served many roles. It appeared in lunchboxes when there was not enough food to prepare a full meal, and it showed up on quiet afternoons when children returned home hungry after long hours outdoors. For some families, it even became a quick breakfast during busy seasons when chores began before sunrise. The sugar and butter sandwich delivered energy, sweetness, and comfort without requiring expensive groceries or extra preparation. What made this sandwich meaningful was the feeling it carried. It reminded families that even during challenging times, small moments of joy mattered. The taste of butter blending with sugar created a memory that stayed with children long after they grew older. It tasted like childhood, like summer days on front porches, and like simple kindness in households that made the most of every resource. The sugar and butter sandwich remains one of the clearest examples of how rural families turned basic ingredients into moments of warmth, resilience, and quiet happiness. The bologna and pickle relish sandwich. The sixth sandwich on this list is the bologna and pickle relish sandwich, a creation that captured both flavor and practicality for rural families in the early 1970s. Bologna was already a staple in small-town pantries because it was inexpensive, versatile, and able to feed a family without breaking the budget. Adding pickle relish elevated the sandwich, providing a tangy contrast that transformed a simple meat slice into something memorable. Preparation was straightforward yet deliberate. Thick slices of bologna were fried lightly in a skillet, allowing the edges to brown and the flavor to deepen. Families then spread a thin layer of sweet or dill pickle relish on soft white bread, depending on what was available. The fried bologna slices were stacked on top, and the sandwich was pressed lightly so the bread absorbed the flavors. Some households added a smear of mayonnaise or mustard if ingredients permitted, but the real focus remained the combination of savory meat and bright, acidic relish. This sandwich was perfect for lunches, long workdays in the fields, or school children returning from morning chores. Its portability, affordability, and satisfying taste made it a favorite among households that relied on ingenuity to stretch ingredients. The tang of the pickle relish complemented the richness of the bologna, making each bite flavorful while still simple. The bologna and pickle relish sandwich represents the creativity of country life. It demonstrates how families in the early 1970s transformed modest, inexpensive ingredients into meals that felt complete and even indulgent. The sandwich carried both practicality and pleasure, reminding children and adults alike that food could nourish the body and create lasting memories. It remained a quiet symbol of resilience, comfort, and the enduring taste of rural America. The ham and apple butter sandwich. The seventh sandwich on this list is the ham and apple butter sandwich, a combination that reflected ingenuity and flavor in rural America during the early 1970s. Ham was often available through leftovers from Sunday dinners, cured meat from small-town markets, or occasional farm-raised pork. Apple butter, a thick, sweet-spiced preserve, was a pantry staple in many households because it could be made at home, preserved without refrigeration, and added a burst of flavor to otherwise simple meals. Preparation required only a few steps but delivered a surprising taste. Slices of ham were layered on soft, often slightly toasted, white bread. Generous spreading of apple butter followed, soaking lightly into the bread and melding with the savory ham. The combination of salt from the ham and the deep sweetness of apple butter created a contrast that felt both comforting and indulgent. Some families added a slice of cheese if they had it, but the essence of the sandwich remained in the union of ham and fruit preserve. The ham and apple butter sandwich served multiple purposes. It was an easy lunch for children heading to school, a midday meal for farm workers, and a quick snack for households short on time. Its portability and simple preparation made it ideal for life in rural America, where meals often needed to be practical yet satisfying. This sandwich captured more than flavor. It represented the resourcefulness of families who learned to combine available ingredients in creative ways. It reminded children of home, highlighted the importance of seasonal preserves, and demonstrated how even modest meals could carry a sense of warmth and care. The ham and apple butter sandwich stands as a testament to the inventive spirit of early 1970s country life. The egg and mayonnaise open-faced sandwich. The eighth sandwich on this list is the egg and mayonnaise open-faced sandwich, a humble but essential meal for rural families in the early 1970s. Eggs were a common household staple, often collected fresh from backyard chickens, making them affordable and reliable. Mayonnaise, whether homemade or store-bought, added creaminess and richness to the sandwich, transforming simple ingredients into a filling and satisfying meal. Preparation began with hard-boiling the eggs until the yolks were firm and the whites fully set. Once cooled, the eggs were chopped or mashed and combined with mayonnaise until smooth. A generous layer of this mixture was spread directly onto a single slice of soft white bread, leaving the sandwich open-faced rather than folded. Some families added a pinch of salt, pepper, or paprika to enhance the flavor. The open-faced presentation allowed the bread to absorb the moisture from the eggs and mayonnaise, creating a soft and creamy texture with every bite. This sandwich was versatile and practical. It served as a quick lunch for children, a midday snack for farm workers, or a simple meal for adults when time or resources were limited. It required minimal ingredients yet provided protein, energy, and comfort. Families appreciated its simplicity and the way it stretched small portions into a meal that could satisfy hunger and offer nourishment throughout the day. The egg and mayonnaise open-faced sandwich represents more than a practical solution. It reflects the resourcefulness and resilience of country households during the early 1970s. It is a reminder that even the most modest ingredients, when combined with care, could produce a dish that carried warmth, familiarity, and lasting memories. This sandwich remains a symbol of ingenuity and comfort in rural American cuisine. The cabbage and bacon sandwich. The ninth sandwich on this list is the cabbage and bacon sandwich, a creation that illustrates the practicality and creativity of rural families in the early 1970s. Cabbage was a common, inexpensive vegetable that could be grown in backyard gardens, preserved through cold storage, or purchased cheaply from local markets. Bacon, although slightly more costly, was often stretched over several meals, adding flavor and richness to simple dishes. Combining the two created a sandwich that was both filling and flavorful, without requiring expensive ingredients. Preparation began by thinly slicing fresh cabbage. Some families lightly wilted the cabbage in a skillet to reduce bitterness, while others used it raw for a crisp texture. Bacon was fried until golden and slightly crispy, releasing its fat and smoky aroma. The bread, typically soft white slices, was buttered lightly, and then the cabbage and bacon were layered generously. A small amount of mayonnaise or mustard was sometimes added if available, but the sandwich's character came from the contrasting flavors of sweet, smoky bacon and the earthy, slightly tangy cabbage. The cabbage and bacon sandwich served many purposes. It was ideal for workers heading to the fields, children taking a midday break at school, or anyone needing a quick, substantial meal. Its portability, combined with the ability to use leftovers or preserved ingredients, made it a practical choice for families who valued efficiency without sacrificing taste. This sandwich represents the ingenuity of early 1970s country life. It demonstrates how households combined what they had on hand to create meals that satisfied both hunger and the desire for flavor. The cabbage and bacon sandwich carries the memory of families who stretched resources, valued creativity, and made every meal matter. The sardine and onion sandwich. The 10th and final sandwich on this list is the sardine and onion sandwich, a bold creation that defined resourcefulness in rural America during the early 1970s. Sardines were inexpensive, widely available in cans, and packed with protein and nutrition. Onions were a common staple, often grown in backyard gardens or purchased at minimal cost. Together, these ingredients created a sandwich that was both practical and surprisingly flavorful, proving that simple, low-cost items could produce a satisfying meal. Preparation began by carefully removing sardines from the can, sometimes draining excess oil but often leaving a small amount for added richness. The fish was lightly mashed to form a spreadable texture. Thinly sliced raw onions were layered on top or mixed directly with the sardines. White bread, either soft or lightly toasted, provided a sturdy base for the combination. A touch of salt and black pepper enhanced the flavor, but families often relied on the natural taste of the sardines and onions to carry the sandwich. Occasionally, a thin layer of butter or mayonnaise was added if available, but the sandwich's character came from the boldness of its ingredients. The sardine and onion sandwich served multiple purposes. It was portable for workers traveling long distances, hearty enough to sustain children during school, and practical for households with limited resources. Its strong flavor made it memorable, teaching children early on that meals could be simple, efficient, and satisfying at the same time. This sandwich represents the ingenuity and resilience of rural families in the early 1970s. It illustrates how modest ingredients were transformed into meals that nourished both body and spirit. The sardine and onion sandwich remains a symbol of country resourcefulness, practicality, and the enduring ability of families to create comfort from what they already had. And there we have it, 10 sandwiches that were more than food, they were lifelines, traditions, and quiet symbols of ingenuity in rural America during the early 1970s. From the sizzle of fried bologna to the subtle sweetness of sugar and butter, each creation tells a story of families who faced scarcity with creativity and transformed the simplest ingredients into meals that mattered. These sandwiches remind us that comfort, flavor, and care do not require abundance. They only require thought, effort, and the willingness to make the most of what is available. By exploring these forgotten recipes, we do more than revisit meals. We connect with a time when resourcefulness shaped daily life, when children carried lunch pails filled with imagination, and when the humble kitchen table became a place of both survival and warmth. Each sandwich carries memories of early mornings, long afternoons in the fields, and quiet evenings where families found satisfaction in modest, yet meaningful, meals. These are the tastes of a vanished era, yet they remain alive through stories and the act of remembering. If this journey through forgotten flavors sparked curiosity or nostalgia, Make sure to join us here on America's Lost Recipes. By subscribing, you become part of a community dedicated to uncovering the meals, memories, and cultural history that shaped everyday life across America. Comment below which sandwich you would try first, and share any childhood favorites your family may have created with the simplest ingredients. History lives in taste, and by revisiting these 10 hillbilly sandwiches, we honor the resourcefulness, creativity, and heart of the families who made country life meaningful. Thank you for watching, and remember, every recipe has a story worth telling, and every meal carries a memory waiting to be rediscovered.